But faith's way of getting right with God says, don't say in your heart, who will go up to heaven? That's to bring Christ down to earth. And don't say who will go down to the place of the dead. It's to bring Christ back to life again. In fact, it says the message is very close at hand. It is on your lips and in your heart. And that message is the very message about faith that we preach. And here's where it hit me in verse 9. If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It hit me. Light bulb moment. I'm going to read that again. Verse 9. If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Paul says the message is right in front of us. It's not that hard. And he gets this from, I went over and looked in Deuteronomy from Moses' farewell challenge to his people. It's Deuteronomy 11 through 14. This command I am giving you today is not too difficult for you, and is not beyond your reach. It is not kept in heaven, so distance that you must ask will go up to heaven and bring it down so we can hear it and obey. It is not kept beyond the sea, so far away that you must ask, who will cross the sea and bring it to us so we can hear it and obey? No, the message is very close at hand. It is on your lips and in your heart so that you can obey it. So Christ has provided our salvation through his incarnation, that's God in human form, and the resurrection. God's salvation is right in front of us. He will come to us wherever we are. All we need to do is respond and accept his gift of salvation. You know, when Paul says that, it's right in front of us. That hit me. And I want y'all to remember that part as I go through this part of the scripture. The message is right in front of you. Verse 10, for it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is openly declaring your faith that you are saved. 11, as the scriptures tell us, anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. And 12 goes into where he's speaking to all people, Jew and Gentiles. Jew and Gentile are the same in this request. They have the same Lord who gives generously to all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. This popped up during my studying because that's an important verse right there. Have you ever been asked by somebody how you become a Christian? And I got to thinking about that. It's maybe I have, maybe I haven't. It's probably because I hadn't put myself out there. But think about it. Has anybody in here been asked, how do I become a Christian? Because it's an important part of what I'm going to get to later. I don't know how I would answer it before I read this. There's a lot of ways that you can. These verses give you a beautiful answer. Salvation is as close as your own lips and heart. And people think it must be a complicated answer, process, but it's not. You know, if you believe in your heart and say it with your mouth that Christ is the risen Lord, we will be saved. It's that simple. And you know, I try to do that. This hit home to me because in my work and my life, I'm not a detailed person. I try to dig down. I'm more of I don't call it big picture because I don't have any great ideas, but I sort of run the bank big picture. I got people doing detailed work. I hate it. I'm not a paperwork guy. That's not my gift. It is some people's other gifts. And even, y'all know, whether I ask it or not, some days I get business advice from Mr. Latimer. And, or some days he gives it to me whether I ask it. And, but he's complicated and obviously a very intelligent man, but it always comes back to me. He says, Tim, you gotta keep it simple. You're making it too complicated. Keep it simple. And then when he explains it to me, it is more simple. But it's no different than this. How do you become a Christian? It's simple. I don't think I ever thought of it that way, but it is simple. You know, it's as close as your own lips and heart. And that really popped out at me. Verse 14, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And this is probably where it gets into what Paul's life was about. In telling others about Christ, an effective witness must include more than being a good example. Eventually, we will have to explain the content of the what and how of the gospel. Modeling the Christian life is important, but we will need to connect the mind of the unbeliever and the message of the gospel. There should never be a debate between those who favor lifestyle evangelism, the ones who are living the gospel, and confrontational evangelism, the ones that are declaring the message. Both should be used together in promoting the gospel. And you know, those two types of evangelism, example of living and preaching the gospel, have to go hand in hand. But it got me thinking, you know, I was reading a little bit about R.C. Sproul. If you ever get a chance to read him, Ken turned me onto him. I was reading about what he said about these verses in Rome, and a lot of similar points that I'm making here about salvation and faith and how you get there, and a lot of it keep it simple. But he remembered who taught him salvation, and he remembered watching models of salvation. And that's sort of how I've grown up. We've all probably grown up watching somebody that we were impressed with, whether it be your parents, whether it be a teacher in school, whether it be a coach. We've always, or Sunday school teachers, or maybe a minister. We've all watched that person that maybe does not say a lot, but you watch them and you admire them by the way they live. Because sometimes people who talk too much and tell you how good they are, they're not really practicing what they preach. But that person that lives that life, you know, they're right on, and it makes me sometimes want to strive to be that person. And so that's a very important part of how we live our lives. But you know, you also got to have the Billy Grahams of the world, and you got to have somebody that can command an audience and has the dialect to bring people in to want to listen to him. Some people are good at it and some are not. There's nothing worse than sitting there listening to somebody that teaches lectures and gospel, and they may know it backwards and forward, but if they don't get your attention verbally and they don't get you to thinking about being a good Christian, you know, it's probably wasted airtime. So I think for all of us to get to where we want to be or try to get better, you have to have an example of both of those. They have to work hand in hand. And that's what Paul's saying. Verse 15, and how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring the good news. And that's exactly what I just said. How beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring the good news. There's nothing like hearing an outstanding preacher or getting a good message on a daily devotional, whether they write it or say it. You know, we must take God's great message of salvation to others so that they can respond to the good news. How will your loved ones and your neighbors hear it unless someone tells them? Is God calling you to take part in making his message known in your community? That's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. Think of one person who needs to hear the good news, and think of something you can do to help him or her hear it. And then take that step as soon as possible. And I read that and I thought, you know, when I started this lesson, I said, you know, I'm struggling. We got to get character builders growing. We got to get this church back and growing young people. And the first thing that came to my mind was always low-hanging fruit, character builders. There's people we've got that are not coming. How can I go get them back? There's church members I see that don't come anymore for whatever reason. How can we get them back? Family members, friends that not coming. I'm thinking, all right, that's going to be my focus moving forward. I'm going to get some of these people that are not coming and get them back on a regular basis because it's important to get them back. And then I read this. Some religious people are spiritually blind, while those who have never been in a church are sometimes the most responsive to God's message, because appearances are deceiving and we can't see into people's hearts. Beware of judging beforehand who will respond to the good news and who will not. So maybe I've been looking in the wrong places. Maybe I've been looking in the wrong places to grow our Sunday school class. Maybe I've been thinking about the wrong people to grow our church. And maybe the answer has been right in front of me. You know, maybe I need to focus on those who have never been in a church. Maybe there's people in our community that I'm walking by every day that I have not even thought about inviting them to character builders or inviting them to our church. I've been too focused on worrying about the people who are not coming on a regular basis and growing our church and pitching in. And maybe this lesson was given to me today to think about that. And maybe it was given to me today to help y'all think about that. So, like Paul said, the message, Christianity may be right in front of us, or it is right in front of us. Maybe this lesson today, to help grow our church and help grow our Sunday school class, maybe that message is right in front of us. Amen.
Amen.